Zara's slender form drifted effortlessly through the zero-gravity confines of the small, battered escape pod. Her iridescent skin shimmered faintly in the dim light of distant stars, casting an otherworldly glow over the confined space. She had been lost in the vastness of the cosmos for what felt like an eternity, with no sense of direction, no beacon to follow. Beside her, little Naya, her 5-year-old daughter, slept soundly, her tiny body cocooned in a thermal blanket. Zara's heart ached as she watched her daughter sleep, innocent and unaware of the danger they were in. Their home planet, Valyria, had been destroyed in the relentless war between the galactic empires. Her people, the Velians, had once thrived in the lush valleys of their world, but now they were scattered refugees, barely clinging to survival. Zara's husband, her partner in life and battle, had died in the chaos, leaving her and Naya to fend for themselves. "We'll make it, my starshine," Zara whispered softly, though she wasn't sure if the words were for Naya or herself. Supplies were running low, and the navigation system was beyond repair. They had no communication link, no way to signal for help. The escape pod was drifting aimlessly, at the mercy of the universe. As Zara stared out into the endless black void of space, her thoughts were interrupted by a faint ping on the pod's scanner. Her eyes widened. Could it be a ship? She quickly adjusted the pod's controls, activating what little remained of its sensor system. There it was. Blip on the radar, moving toward them. Her heart raced. It could be pirates or worse, but it could also be their only chance at survival. "Stay calm," she whispered to herself, her fingers trembling as she steered the pod toward the unknown vessel. The ship that loomed before Zara's escape pod was unlike anything she had ever seen. It was rough around the edges, patched together from various parts, but functional, clearly a human vessel. Humans were known throughout the galaxy for their unpredictable nature, resourceful, stubborn, and often dangerous. Yet, they were also compassionate when it suited them. A voice crackled over the comms, breaking the eerie silence. "Unknown vessel, this is Captain Adrian Cortez of the Iron Will. State your identity and your purpose." Zara's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected the voice to sound so human. She hesitated for a moment before responding. "My name is Zara. I'm a Velian refugee, and I have a child with me. We're stranded and in need of assistance. Please, we mean no harm." There was a pause on the other end, long enough to make her heart race again. Then, the voice returned, this time softer. "All right, Zara. I'm bringing you aboard. Prepare for docking." Zara exhaled, relief flooding her body. As the docking procedure commenced, she gently shook Naya awake. "We're going to be okay," she said, trying to smile, but the uncertainty still gnawed at her. When the pod doors opened, the stark contrast of the human ship's interior greeted them. The air smelled of oil and metal, and the lighting was dim, but it was warm, and more importantly, it was safe, for now. Captain Adrian Cortez stood at the entrance, tall and rugged, his face etched with the signs of a hard life. His eyes were sharp, but there was a softness to them as he looked at Naya. "Welcome aboard," he said, offering Zara a small nod. Zara felt a wave of gratitude, but also caution. "Thank you. We've been drifting for days, maybe weeks. Come, let's get you both some food and rest," Adrian said, leading them into the ship. As they followed him through the narrow corridors, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was just the beginning of a new journey, one filled with unknown challenges and perhaps unexpected allies. Over the next few days, Zara and Naya slowly adapted to life aboard the Iron Will. Adrian had been kind, offering them food and a small room to rest, but Zara remained guarded. She had learned the hard way that trust was a fragile thing, especially when survival was at stake. Adrian, for his part, kept a respectful distance, though he occasionally checked in on them. His crew was small, a handful of scrappy humans who seemed to live on the fringes of the galaxy, taking odd jobs and surviving by sheer will. Zara had heard stories of humans like this, scavengers and mercenaries, but Adrian's crew didn't fit the mold entirely. They were survivors like her. One evening, after Naya had fallen asleep, Adrian approached Zara in the small galley where she sat, sipping a cup of warm broth. He sat across from her, his face thoughtful. "You don't have to be afraid, you know," he said, his voice low but sincere. "I know things have been rough for you and your daughter. Can't imagine what you've been through, but I'm not here to hurt you." Zara studied him, unsure of how to respond. "Why are you helping us?" Adrian leaned back in his chair, rubbing the back of his neck. "I've seen too much suffering in this galaxy. Too many people left to fend for themselves. I can't save everyone, but I can do something." Zara felt a small flicker of hope, but she quickly extinguished it. "What's the catch?" she asked, her tone sharp. She couldn't afford to be naive. Adrian smiled, but there was sadness in his eyes. "No catch, just chance to do the right thing." For the first time in what felt like forever, Zara felt a glimmer of trust forming. Maybe, just maybe, they had found someone who wasn't trying to take advantage of them. But she wasn't ready to let her guard down entirely. Zara sat in silence for a moment, contemplating Adrian's words. The galaxy had been cruel to her people. She had seen kindness turn to betrayal, promises shattered like glass. Trust, she had learned, was not something to be given lightly. But as she looked into Adrian's eyes, she saw no hint of deception, only a quiet resolve. Perhaps he was different, but that didn't mean the danger was gone. "I appreciate what you've done," Zara said softly, her voice guarded but sincere. "But I need to know what your plans are. Where are we headed?" Adrian sighed, leaning forward and resting his elbows on the table. "We're headed to a neutral zone, far from the main conflict. I've got some contacts there, people who can help you disappear, start over. It's not perfect, but it's safe, and that's what you need right now." Zara nodded slowly, her mind racing. A neutral zone could offer them the fresh start she had been dreaming of, but it could also bring new dangers. In a galaxy filled with factions, even neutral spaces weren't immune to violence and corruption. "And after that?" she asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. "What happens when we get there?" Adrian shrugged. "That's up to you. My job is to get you there safely. After that, you're free to go wherever you want. No strings attached." The simplicity of his words disarmed her. No one had ever offered her anything without expecting something in return. Could it really be that straightforward? Zara's thoughts were interrupted as the ship shuddered, a low hum reverberating through the walls. "What was that?" Zara asked, her body tensing as she instinctively reached out to steady herself. Adrian frowned, his expression darkening. "We've been picking up strange readings on the scanners. Could be debris, could be something else. Stay here. I'm going to check it out." Before Zara could protest, Adrian was already on his feet, moving swiftly toward the door. Zara's heart raced. She didn't like feeling helpless. But with Naya asleep, she knew she couldn't leave her daughter alone. She would have to trust Adrian, at least for now. Moments later, the ship's intercom crackled to life. "All hands to the bridge. We've got company." Zara's stomach dropped. Company. That usually meant trouble. Zara didn't wait. She quickly woke Naya, wrapping her in a blanket and carrying her to the ship's bridge. By the time they arrived, the atmosphere was tense. Adrian stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on the ship's main display screen. Zara's heart pounded as she followed his gaze. There, on the edge of the screen, was a massive ship, sleek and ominous, its dark hull reflecting the light of distant stars. It was clearly not friendly. "Who are they?" Zara whispered, her voice barely audible. Adrian didn't look away from the screen. "Pirates," he said grimly. "And they're heading straight for us." Zara's blood ran cold. Pirates were the worst kind of enemies in this lawless part of the galaxy. They would raid ships, steal everything of value, and leave no survivors. She held Naya tighter, her mind racing for a plan, but Adrian was already moving. "Buckle in," he commanded, his tone sharp. "This is going to get rough." Without hesitation, Zara secured Naya in a seat and strapped herself in beside her. Adrian's crew scrambled to their stations, preparing for whatever was about to happen. The Iron Will wasn't a combat vessel. It was built for survival, for speed and endurance. But against a pirate ship, they were hopelessly outmatched. The pirate vessel loomed closer on the screen, its weapon systems lighting up like a predator ready to strike. Zara's hands gripped the armrests of her seat. She had been through battles before, but not like this. She wasn't a warrior anymore. She was a mother, and her only priority was keeping Naya safe. "They're hailing us," one of Adrian's crew members called out, his voice tense. Adrian's jaw tightened. "Put them through." The screen flickered, and the face of a grizzled pirate captain appeared. His eyes were cold, his mouth twisted in a cruel smile. Well, he sneered. "What do we have here?" Little human ship trying to slip by unnoticed. Adrian didn't flinch. "We've got nothing worth taking," he said evenly. "Let us pass, and you won't have to waste your time." The pirate captain chuckled darkly. "Oh, I doubt that. You see, we're not just looking for cargo. We're looking for passengers, particularly ones who don't want to be found. And judging by the readings we're picking up, I'd say you've got something interesting on board." Zara's heart skipped a beat. They knew. Somehow, they knew she and Naya were on board. Her mind raced, searching for a way out. But Adrian spoke before she could. "Whatever you think we have, you're wrong," Adrian said, his voice hardening. "But if you want to push your luck, be my guest." Zara shot Adrian a look, but he remained focused on the pirate captain, his expression unreadable. Was he bluffing? Or did he have a plan? The pirate captain's smile faded, replaced by a look of cold calculation. "Very well," he said, his voice dripping with menace. "Prepare to be boarded." The pirate ship was closing in fast, its weapon systems glowing ominously on the screen. Zara could feel the tension in the air as Adrian barked orders to his crew, each of them scrambling to prepare for the inevitable boarding. "We can't fight them off," Zara said, her voice low but urgent. "They'll tear this ship apart." Adrian glanced at her, his eyes sharp. "I know. That's why we're not fighting." Before Zara could ask what he meant, Adrian hit a series of switches on the console. A low hum vibrated through the ship, followed by a sudden lurch as the Iron Will accelerated, its engines roaring to life. "We're running," Adrian said, his tone grim. "Hang on." Zara barely had time to process what was happening before the ship rocketed forward, its speed doubling as it darted away from the pirate vessel. The stars outside the windows blurred into streaks of light as the Iron Will pushed its engines to the limit. The pirate ship fired after them, its lasers streaking through the darkness. But Adrian's quick maneuvering kept them just out of range. The ship shuddered violently as it dodged incoming fire, but it held together, speeding toward the edge of the system. Come on, Adrian muttered under his breath, his hands gripping the controls tightly. The pirate ship wasn't giving up easily, but Adrian's skillful piloting kept them ahead, weaving through asteroid fields and debris clouds with precision. Zara held Naya close, whispering reassurances to her daughter, though her own heart pounded with fear. After what felt like an eternity, the pirate ship finally fell behind, its weapons falling silent as it gave up the chase. The Iron Will coasted into the relative safety of deep space, the crew letting out a collective sigh of relief. Zara exhaled, her body still tense with adrenaline. Adrian glanced over at her, his face drawn but relieved. We made it. For the first time since they had boarded the ship, Zara allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they were going to be okay. The hum of the Iron Will's engines became a soothing background noise as Zara sat quietly, watching over her sleeping daughter. After the encounter with the pirates, the ship had finally slipped into the peaceful stretches of deep space, far from any immediate threats. Naya had fallen asleep in Zara's arms, exhausted from the tension of the escape, and for the first time in days, Zara allowed herself to relax. Hyrion's crew had settled back into their routines, though the lingering stress of their narrow escape still hung in the air. Zara couldn't help but feel a weight lifting off her shoulders. They had survived, but survival was just the beginning. There was still a long way to go before she and Naya could truly be safe. Hadrian entered the galley quietly, his face marked by exhaustion, but his eyes still held the quiet determination that Zara had come to recognize. He offered her a small smile as he sat down across from her. "Looks like we've got a bit of peace for now," he said, his voice low, not wanting to wake Naya. Zara nodded, shifting slightly to make sure Naya was comfortable. "Thanks to you," she replied, her tone sincere. "If it weren't for your quick thinking, we wouldn't have made it out of there." Hadrian waved a hand dismissively. "It was a team effort. My crew knows what they're doing. We've been in tight spots before." Zara studied him for a moment, her thoughts swirling. There was something about Hadrian that she couldn't quite place. He was more than just a mercenary or a scavenger. His actions, his calm under pressure, it all suggested something deeper. Someone who had seen the worst the galaxy had to offer but had chosen to keep his humanity intact. "Owe you more than just thanks," Zara said quietly, her gaze falling to Naya. "You didn't have to help us. Most people wouldn't have." Hadrian leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "I've been in your position before. Maybe not exactly the same, but I know what it's like to have nowhere to turn. And I know what it's like to have something precious to protect." Zara's eyes flicked up to meet his, and for a moment, they shared a quiet understanding. They were both survivors shaped by loss and the relentless brutality of the galaxy. But they were also protectors, people who would do anything to keep those they cared about safe. "Why did you leave your home?" Hadrian asked softly, his tone careful. Zara's heart tightened at the question, but she knew it was only fair to share her story. "My planet, Valyria, was caught in the middle of a war. The Empire wanted control of our resources, and they destroyed everything to get it. My husband, he fought to defend our world, but he didn't make it. Naya and I barely escaped." Hadrian nodded, his expression somber. "I'm sorry." Zara shrugged, though the weight of her loss still lingered. "It's just how things are now. The galaxy is a cruel place." There was a long pause before Hadrian spoke again. "It doesn't have to be." Zara looked at him, a flicker of something stirring within her. Could things really be different? Could they find a way to live without constantly running, without looking over their shoulders? She wanted to believe that it was possible, for Naya's sake if nothing else. "Where are we going now?" she asked, her voice quieter, softer, as if afraid to hope for too much. Hadrian smiled, though it was a tired smile. "I'm taking you to a place called Haven. It's not perfect, but it's a sanctuary for people like you, people who need a fresh start. It's neutral territory, hidden from the major factions. You and Naya will be safe there." "Haven," Zara repeated, the words sounding foreign on her lips, but also comforting. "What's it like?" Hadrian leaned forward, his eyes lighting up slightly. "It's a small colony, tucked away in an uncharted system. It was founded by people who were tired of the endless fighting and just wanted to live in peace. There's a community there, people from all walks of life, different species, all coming together to make something better." Zara felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. Place like that sounded too good to be true. After everything she and Naya had been through, could they really find a place to call home again? "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've done more for us than I could have ever asked for." Hadrian shook his head, his smile fading slightly. "You don't owe me anything, Zara. Just take care of your daughter. Make sure she grows up in a world where she doesn't have to be afraid." Zara looked down at Naya, her heart swelling with both love and sadness. She would do whatever it took to give her daughter a life free from fear and pain. And maybe, just maybe, Haven could be the place where that life began. The journey to Haven took several days, but the tension that had once filled the ship slowly melted away as they traveled through the quiet stretches of space. Hadrian's crew, though rough around the edges, began to warm up to Zara and Naya. They would bring small gifts for Naya, trinkets and snacks, and share stories of their own adventures. Zara, still cautious, kept her distance from the crew, but she appreciated their kindness. It had been so long since she had been around people who weren't driven by greed or desperation. For the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of hope that perhaps the galaxy wasn't as cruel as she had believed. One evening, as the ship neared Haven's system, Hadrian joined Zara and Naya in the ship's observation deck. The stars stretched out before them, endless and beautiful, and for a brief moment, Zara allowed herself to relax. "We'll be there soon," Hadrian said, his voice quiet as he watched the stars. "You'll have a fresh start. You deserve that." Zara didn't respond right away. She stared out into the vast expanse of space, her thoughts drifting. She had spent so long running, so long trying to survive, that the idea of finally stopping felt almost foreign. "I don't know what to do," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "I've been running for so long. I don't know how to stop." Hadrian turned to look at her, his expression gentle. "You don't have to figure it all out right away. Just take it one step at a time. You've already made it this far. That's something." Zara nodded, though uncertainty still gnawed at her. But as she looked down at Naya, who was gazing at the stars with wide eyes, she knew she had to try. For Naya, she would find a way to stop running. "We'll make it," Zara whispered, more to herself than anyone else. And as the ship finally approached Haven's atmosphere, Zara felt a small, fragile seed of hope take root in her heart. Maybe this was the beginning of something new. Maybe, just maybe, they had found their way home.